The bridge of the colony ship Harmony's light hummed quietly as it moved through empty space. Captain Minho sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. His ship carried 3,000 families to their new home, on the edge of human space. The journey had been peaceful so far, just the way he liked it. "Captain," called Gina from her station at the communications console. "I'm picking up something strange." Minho turned to look at the young officer. Gina had been with his crew for 2 years now. She was good at her job and never bothered him unless it was important. "What kind of strange?" he asked. "It's an encrypted signal, very weak, coming from the Kepler sector." Gina's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "Give me a few minutes to clean it up." The Kepler sector was far from human space. Minho knew only a few alien species lived out there. Most of them were peaceful farmers and traders. Nothing exciting ever happened in that part of the galaxy. "Take your time," Minho said. He went back to watching the stars. 20 minutes later, Gina called out again. This time her voice was different. "Worried. Captain, you need to hear this." Minho walked over to her station. The other bridge officers stopped their work to listen. Gina pressed a button, and a voice filled the bridge. It was speaking in broken galactic standard, the language most aliens used to talk to each other. This is Elder Naim of Taros Prime. Please, anyone who can hear this message, we need help. The Draxons came 3 days ago. They said we were criminals. They said we helped their enemies. We never helped anyone fight. We just grow food." The voice stopped for a moment. In the background, they could hear explosions and screaming. "They're killing everyone. The children. Oh gods, they're killing the children too. They have big ships in orbit. We can't fight them. Our defense force lasted 20 minutes. Please, if anyone gets this message, help us. We have 5 million people on this world. Maybe less now. They're burning our cities. The message cut off with a loud bang and static. The bridge was silent. Minho felt his stomach turn cold. He had heard about the Draxon Empire before. They were known for being cruel, but this was worse than anything he had imagined. "When was this sent?" he asked. 6 hours ago," Gina said quietly. "The signal had to travel a long way to reach us." "So it's probably too late," said his first officer, Lieutenant Wanho. Minho stared at the communications console. 5 million people. He tried to imagine that many lives being snuffed out while he sat safely on his ship, drinking coffee and reading reports. "Sir," Wanho said carefully, "we should stay out of this. It's not our fight. Our job is to get these families to their new home safely." Minho knew Wanho was right. Earth had strict rules about getting involved in alien wars. Humans were supposed to stay neutral, mind their own business, focus on building their own colonies and staying safe. But the voice on that message kept playing in his head. Elder Naim had sounded like any grandfather from Earth, just a scared old man watching his world burn. "Captain," Gina said, "there's more to the message. A data packet with coordinates and system information." "Show me." The main screen changed to show a star map. Taros Prime was highlighted in red. It was a small world with 3 moons orbiting a yellow star like Earth's sun. The planet information scrolled past. Breathable air, blue oceans, green continents covered with farms and small cities. Population, 5.2 million. Defense rating, minimal. "It's just farmers," Gina whispered. "They don't even have real weapons." Minho closed his eyes. When he was a young officer, his captain had told him something he never forgot. The measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching. It's what they do when no one will ever know. Right now, no one would ever know if he just deleted this message and kept flying toward the colony. The families on his ship would arrive safely at their new home. He would file his mission report. Life would go on, but 5 million innocent people would be dead. Wanho, he said, opening his eyes. Bring up the emergency protocols. Sir, Protocol 7. The one we never wanted to use. Wanho's face went pale. Every human ship captain knew about Protocol 7. It was the emergency beacon that would call for military help. But using it meant admitting that something was so terrible, so urgent that they couldn't handle it alone. Captain, if you activate that beacon, there's no taking it back. Earth Command will send ships, real warships. This could start a war. Minho looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them civilians. They signed up to help families reach new worlds, not to get involved in galactic conflicts. I know, he said, but look at that message again. Look at those coordinates. This isn't about politics or territory. This is murder, genocide. He walked to his captain's console and placed his hand on the palm reader. A red panel slid open, revealing a single black button. Sir, Wanho said desperately, think about our passengers. 3,000 families. What if the Draxans decide we're enemies too? Minho thought about his own daughter back on Earth. She was the same age as some of the children on Taros Prime. What would he want someone to do if she was in danger? The Draxans won't bother with us, he said. We're just humans. Everyone knows we're not important enough to worry about. He pressed the button. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every console. The emergency beacon activated, sending out a signal that would reach the nearest human military base in 47 minutes. Message sent, the computer announced in a calm voice. Military assistance requested. Please stand by. Minho sat back in his command chair. His hands were shaking slightly, but he felt calm inside. He had done the right thing, maybe the only thing he could do and still live with himself. Captain, Gina said quietly, what if no one comes? What if Earth Command says it's not their problem? Minho looked at the star map again. Taros Prime seemed so small and far away. Then at least we tried, he said. At least someone heard their call for help. He didn't know it yet, but his decision had just changed the galaxy forever. The bridge of the colony ship Harmony's light hummed quietly as it moved through empty space. Captain Minho sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main screen. His ship carried 3,000 families to their new home, on the edge of human space. The journey had been peaceful so far, just the way he liked it. Captain, called Gina from her station at the communications console. I'm picking up something strange. Minho turned to look at the young officer. Gina had been with his crew for 2 years now. She was good at her job and never bothered him unless it was important. What kind of strange? He asked. It's an encrypted signal, very weak, coming from the Kepler sector. Gina's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Give me a few minutes to clean it up. The Kepler sector was far from human space. Minho knew only a few alien species lived out there. Most of them were peaceful farmers and traders. Nothing exciting ever happened in that part of the galaxy. Take your time, Minho said. He went back to watching the stars. 20 minutes later, Gina called out again. This time her voice was different. Worried. Captain, you need to hear this. Minho walked over to her station. The other bridge officers stopped their work to listen. Gina pressed a button, and a voice filled the bridge. It was speaking in broken galactic standard, the language most aliens use to talk to each other. This is Elder Naim of Taros Prime. Please, anyone who can hear this message, we need help. The Draxans came 3 days ago. They said we were criminals. They said we helped their enemies. We never helped anyone fight. We just grow food. The voice stopped for a moment. In the background, they could hear explosions and screaming. They're killing everyone. The children. Oh, gods, they're killing the children, too. They have big ships in orbit. We can't fight them. Our defense force lasted 20 minutes. Please, if anyone gets this message, help us. We have 5 million people on this world. Maybe less now. They're burning our cities. The message cut off with a loud bang and static. The bridge was silent. Minho felt his stomach turn cold. He had heard about the Draxan Empire before. They were known for being cruel. But this was worse than anything he had imagined. When was this sent? He asked. 6 hours ago, Gina said quietly. The signal had to travel a long way to reach us. So it's probably too late, said his first officer, Lieutenant Wanho. Minho stared at the communications console. 5 million people. He tried to imagine that many lives being snuffed out while he sat safely on his ship drinking coffee and reading reports. Sir, Wanho said carefully, we should stay out of this. It's not our fight. Our job is to get these families to their new home safely. Minho knew Wanho was right. Earth had strict rules about getting involved in alien wars. Humans were supposed to stay neutral, mind their own business, focus on building their own colonies and staying safe. But the voice on that message kept playing in his head. Elder Naim had sounded like any grandfather from Earth. Just a scared old man watching his world burn. Captain, Gina said, there's more to the message. A data packet with coordinates and system information. Show me. The main screen changed to show a star map. Taros Prime was highlighted in red. It was a small world with 3 moons orbiting a yellow star like Earth's sun. The planet information scrolled past. Breathable air, blue oceans, green continents covered with farms and small cities. Population, 5.2 million. Defense rating, minimal. It's just farmers, Gina whispered. They don't even have real weapons. Minho closed his eyes. When he was a young officer, his captain had told him something he never forgot. The measure of a person isn't what they do when everyone's watching. It's what they do when no one will ever know. Right now, no one would ever know if he just deleted this message and kept flying toward the colony. The families on his ship would arrive safely at their new home. He would file his mission report. Life would go on, but 5 million innocent people would be dead. Wanho, he said, opening his eyes. Bring up the emergency protocols. Sir, Protocol 7. The one we never wanted to use. Wanho's face went pale. Every human ship captain knew about Protocol 7. It was the emergency beacon that would call for military help. But using it meant admitting that something was so terrible, so urgent, that they couldn't handle it alone. Captain, if you activate that beacon, there's no taking it back. Earth Command will send ships, real warships. This could start a war. Minho looked around his bridge. His crew was young, most of them civilians. They signed up to help families reach new worlds, not to get involved in galactic conflicts. I know, he said. But look at that message again. Look at those coordinates. This isn't about politics or territory. This is murder, genocide. He walked to his captain's console and placed his hand on the palm reader. A red panel slid open, revealing a single black button. "Sir," Wanho said desperately, "think about our passengers. 3,000 families. What if the Draxans decide we're enemies too?" Minho thought about his own daughter back on Earth. She was the same age as some of the children on Taros Prime. What would he want someone to do if she was in danger? "The Draxans won't bother with us," he said. "We're just humans. Everyone knows we're not important enough to worry about." He pressed the button. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Red lights flashed on every console. The emergency beacon activated, sending out a signal that would reach the nearest human military base in 47 Admiral Soman was eating breakfast in her private quarters when the emergency alert came through. The sound was sharp and urgent, cutting through the quiet morning routine aboard the dreadnought Iron Will. She set down her coffee cup and touched the communication panel beside her desk. "Admiral, this is Commander Byung-ho in the Communications Center. We have a Protocol 7 activation from the civilian ship Harmony's Light." Soman felt her stomach tighten. In 30 years of service, she had never seen a Protocol 7 alert. "Most people hoped they never would." "Send me the details," she said, already reaching for her uniform jacket. The data appeared on her personal screen. A distress call from something called Taros Prime. Mass civilian casualties. Request for immediate military intervention. She read the transcript of Elder Naeem's message twice, her expression growing darker with each word. "Get me Admiral Jusik at Fleet Command," she ordered. "Priority 1 channel." The connection took 3 minutes to establish. Admiral Jusik's weathered face appeared on her screen. Behind him, she could see the busy command center of the Sol Defense Network. "Soman," he said without greeting, "I assume you're calling about the Kepler sector situation." "Yes, sir. What are my orders?" Jusik was quiet for a moment. She could see him thinking, weighing options that would affect millions of lives. "The Galactic Council sent us a message an hour ago," he said finally. "They want us to stay out of this. They say it's an internal matter between the Draxan Empire and a world that was supporting terrorists." "And what do you say, sir?" Jusik smiled grimly. "I say the Galactic Council can go to hell. Those are innocent farmers getting slaughtered out there. Take the 7th Fleet and show the galaxy what happens when you murder children in front of humans." "Sir, the 7th Fleet is substantial. 12 battle groups. The aliens have never seen that much human firepower in one place." "Good. Maybe it's time they learned what we're really capable of." Soman felt a cold satisfaction settle in her chest. For decades, the other species had looked down on humanity. They called them deathworlders, primitives from a harsh planet who were too violent and unpredictable for civilized space. The Galactic Council barely tolerated human membership. Trade agreements were difficult. Diplomatic missions were insulted and ignored. But that attitude had given humanity something valuable: the freedom to build their military in secret. While the aliens argued about trade routes and territorial disputes, humans had been designing weapons, testing new technologies, training for wars they hoped would never come. "Admiral," Jusik continued, "I'm giving you full tactical authority. Rules of engagement are simple. Protect the innocent. Eliminate the threat. The politicians can clean up the mess later." "Understood, sir. How long do I have?" "Captain Minho's beacon came from the Harmony's Light. She's a colony ship with 3,000 civilians aboard. If the Draxans find her—" "They won't," Soman said. "We'll be there first." 20 minutes later, the entire 7th Fleet was preparing for combat deployment. Soman stood on the bridge of the Iron Will, watching her ships take formation through the main viewport. Each battle group centered around a massive carrier, surrounded by cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels. The smallest ship in her fleet was larger than most alien battleships. "Admiral," reported her tactical officer, Commander Yunji. "All battle grew in minutes." "Message sent," the computer announced in a calm voice. "Military assistance requested. Please stand by." Minho sat back in his command chair. His hands were shaking slightly, but he felt calm inside. He had done the right thing. Maybe the only thing he could do, and still live with himself. "Captain," Gina said quietly, "what if no one comes? What if Earth Command says it's not there? Problem?" Minho looked at the star map again. Taros Prime seemed so small and far away. "Then at least we tried," he said. "At least someone heard their call for help." Lieutenant Commander Heon watched his destroyer squadron drop out of hyperspace at the edge of the Taros Prime system. His ship, the Nightblade, led 5 other destroyers in a careful approach toward the planet. Their stealth systems were active, making them nearly invisible to standard sensors. "Contact," reported his sensor officer, Ensign Taehyun. 16 Draxan ships in orbit around the planet. They're in standard siege formation. Hyon studied the tactical display. The Draxan fleet was positioned to block any escape from the planet, while maintaining optimal firing positions for orbital bombardment. It was a textbook siege deployment, designed to crush any resistance from the surface. "Any sign they've detected us?" he asked. "Negative, sir. Their sensors are focused on the planet. They're not even running standard patrol sweeps." Heon wasn't surprised. The Draxans were overconfident. They probably thought no one would be stupid enough to challenge them this far from civilized space. After all, who would risk a war over some unknown farming world? Humans, apparently. "Sir," called his communications officer, "Admiral Soman is requesting a full tactical report. Tell the Admiral we have eyes on the target. 16 enemy ships, standard siege formation. No patrol craft, minimal defensive screen. They're not expecting visitors." Heon continued to study the enemy formation. 3 heavy cruisers anchored the center, with destroyers spread out in a loose perimeter. The support ships hung back near the system's edge, probably coordinating the ground. "Assault." "Sir," Taehyun said urgently, "I'm detecting weapon signatures from the planet's surface. The Draxans are bombarding civilian areas." The main screen shifted to show thermal readings from Taros Prime. Bright flashes marked the impact points of plasma bombardment. Each flash represented hundreds, maybe thousands of lives ended in an instant. "Time until the main fleet arrives?" Hyon asked. 15 minutes, sir." Hyon made his decision. "All ships, break stealth. Target the closest destroyer. Weapons free, sir?" his tactical officer questioned. "We're outnumbered 16-6. "Not for long," Heon said grimly. "Besides, someone needs to get their attention." The Nightblade and her sister ships dropped their stealth fields and accelerated toward the Draxan formation. Their sudden appearance sent alarm signals racing through the enemy fleet. On the bridge of the Draxan command ship Subjugator, War Marshal Vorthak stared at his displays in confusion. "What are those ships?" he demanded. "Unknown design, Marshal," replied his sensor operator. "The computer can't identify the hull configuration. They're small, maybe destroyer class." "Where did they come from?" "They just appeared, sir. Advanced stealth technology." Vorthak studied the approaching ships. They looked different from anything in his databases. Angular hulls, dark armor, unusual weapon placements. Definitely not any of the local species. "Open a channel," he ordered. On. The Nightblade, Hyon received the incoming transmission. Unknown vessels, came Vorthak's voice, speaking in heavily accented Galactic Standard. You are interfering with an Imperial operation. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Hyon looked around his bridge. His crew was young but well-trained. They had prepared for this moment their entire careers. Time to see if all that training was worth something. Open a channel, he told his communications officer. The connection activated. For the first time in decades, a human military officer spoke directly to an alien aggressor. Draxon ships, Hyon said in perfect Galactic Standard. This is Lieutenant Commander Hyon of the Terran Defense Corps. You are conducting illegal attacks against civilian populations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. There was a long pause. Then Vorthak's laughter echoed across the communication channel. Terran, you mean the primitive deathworlders? What are a few human ships going to do against the might of the Draxon Empire? You're about to find out, Hyon replied calmly. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Target their lead destroyer. Full spread. Quantum torpedoes. Torpedoes locked and ready, sir. Fire. 6 brilliant points of light streaked away from the human destroyers. The Draxon ships, caught completely off guard, had no time to raise shields or take evasive action. The quantum torpedoes struck with devastating precision. The lead Draxon destroyer simply disappeared. One moment, it was a kilometer-long warship bristling with weapons. The next moment, it was an expanding cloud of superheated gas and metal fragments. Target destroyed, reported the tactical officer, his voice amazed at the weapon's effectiveness. The Draxon fleet erupted into chaos. Ships scattered in all directions, frantically raising shields and charging weapons. But Hyon's destroyers were already moving, their next targets selected. Sir, Taehyun called out, 2 more Draxon destroyers moving to intercept. They're charging plasma cannons. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. The Nightblade twisted through space like a dancer, avoiding the clumsy plasma bolts from the Draxon ships. Human destroyers were built for speed and agility. The Draxon vessels, designed for overwhelming firepower, couldn't match their movement. More quantum torpedoes lanced out. Another Draxon destroyer died in nuclear fire. This is impossible, Vorthak screamed over the tactical network. How are 6 primitive ships destroying my fleet? His question was answered a moment later, when space lit up with new arrivals. Admiral Soman's main battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 12 massive carrier groups, over 300 ships total, all bearing the insignia of the Terran Defense Corps. On his flagship bridge, Vorthak stared at the incoming fleet with growing horror. Each human carrier was larger than his biggest battleship. The destroyers that had seemed small now looked tiny compared to the approaching dreadnoughts. Marshal, his communications officer said weakly, the humans are transmitting on all frequencies. Put it through. Admiral Soman's voice filled every ship in the system, speaking with the authority of Earth itself. Attention, Draxon forces. You are guilty of war crimes against civilian populations. You have one chance to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons and prepare to be taken into custody. Any ship that attempts to flee or continue hostile actions will be destroyed. Vorthak looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at the tactical display in shock. 300 human ships were moving into attack formation with mechanical precision. Their weapon signatures were unlike anything in the Imperial databases. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, should we surrender? For a moment, Vorthak considered it. but he was a war marshal of the Draxan Empire. His ancestors had conquered 100 worlds. He would not be the first to surrender to a handful of primitive deathworlders. "All ships," he commanded, "attack Pattern 7. Concentrate fire on their flagship. Show these humans what Imperial plasma can do." The Draxan fleet charged forward, weapons blazing. Plasma bolts filled space like a deadly light show. For a few seconds, it looked like the Empire might still have a chance. Then the human fleet opened fire. The difference was immediate and absolute. Where Draxan weapons created pretty light shows, human weapons tore reality apart. Quantum torpedoes moved at incredible speeds, impossible to intercept or evade. Particle beams cut through the strongest armor like it was paper. Missile volleys so dense they blocked out the stars. In less than 10 minutes, half the Draxan siege fleet was gone. "Marshal," his sensor operator screamed, "we've lost 8 ships. Their weapons are... They're not possible." Vorthak watched another of his cruisers die under human fire. The primitives weren't just winning. They were demonstrating such technological superiority that resistance was meaningless. "Retreat," he said quietly. "Sir, full retreat. All ships. Emergency jump to the rally point." But as his surviving ships tried to escape, they found their path blocked by more human vessels. Captain Young-Ho's stealth frigates had been waiting in hyperspace, anticipating exactly this move. The trap was complete. Hion watched from the night blade as the last Draxan ship was reduced to wreckage. In 37 minutes, the most powerful alien fleet in this sector had been completely annihilated. "Sir," Taehyun reported, "Admiral Soman is signaling. We're to take position for orbital support of the ground operation." Hyun nodded. The space battle was over. Now came the hard part, saving whoever was left alive on Taros Prime. As his destroyers moved into orbital position, he wondered what the rest of the galaxy would think when word of this battle spread. For the first time, humans had shown their true military capability. The age of being ignored and dismissed was over. Commander Deho stood in the launch bay of the assault carrier Thunderstrike, watching his Marines prepare for combat. Around him, 3,000 soldiers checked their weapons and armor one final time. These weren't ordinary troops. They were the 15th Marine Expeditionary Force, specialists in hostile environment operations. "Attention all units," came Admiral Soman's voice over the ship's communication system. "Orbital resistance has been eliminated. Ground operation is now commencing. Mission parameters remain unchanged. Locate and protect civilian populations. Eliminate hostile forces." Deho touched the communication panel on his armor. "All battalion commanders report status." The responses came quickly. Major Miray's Special Forces unit was ready for urban operations. Colonel Jaewon's Heavy Assault Battalion had their powered armor systems online. Captain Sora's medical teams were prepared for mass casualty treatment. "Sir," called Sergeant Kang Min. From his technical station, "We're getting real-time intelligence from the orbital sensors. The Draxans have concentrated their forces around 3 major cities. The tactical display showed Taros Prime's main continent. Red markers indicated Draxan positions, while blue areas marked possible civilian survivors. The picture was grim. Most of the planet's cities showed signs of heavy bombardment. "What about resistance from the local forces?" Deho asked. "Minimal, sir. The Planetary Defense Force was eliminated in the first day of the invasion. We're detecting some scattered civilian groups hiding in the mountains and forests." Deho studied the map. 50,000 Draxan troops were spread across the planet, conducting what their own communications called purification operations. The term made his stomach turn. He had read the intelligence reports about Draxan tactics. They didn't just conquer worlds. They eliminated entire populations that might cause future problems. "Sir," reported his communications officer. "Captain, Yuna's bomber wings are requesting permission to begin close air support. Tell her to wait for my signal. I want to know exactly where the civilians are before we start dropping ordnance." The launch bay doors opened, revealing the blue and green surface of Taros Prime below. From orbit, it looked peaceful, beautiful, even. The scars of war weren't visible from this distance. "All units board your transports. First wave launches in 2 minutes. Deho climbed into his command dropship, a heavily armored vehicle designed to survive surface-to-air fire. Around him, his staff officers strapped themselves into crash seats. The ship's pilot, Lieutenant Inha, was already running through her pre-flight checks. "Sir," she called back, "we're cleared for launch. Estimated time to surface, 4 minutes. Take us down." The dropship fell away from the carrier like a metal meteor. Through the viewports, Deho could see dozens of other transports descending toward the planet. Each one carried a squad of Marines in full combat gear. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship began to shake from atmospheric friction. Then the shaking got worse as Draxan anti-aircraft fire began exploding around them. "Evasive maneuvers!" Inha shouted, throwing the dropship into a spiraling dive. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, "multiple missile locks. Draxan surface-to-air systems are active." Deho opened the tactical channel. "Air support. This is ground command. We need immediate suppression of enemy air defenses." Captain Yuna's voice crackled through the static. "Copy that. Ground command. Bomber wings are moving to attack positions. Through." The viewport, Deho watched as sleek human fighter bombers swept down from orbit. Their weapons were precise and devastating. Draxan missile sites disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. "Air defenses neutralized," Yunha reported. "You're clear for landing." The dropship touched down in a field outside the city of New Haven, the largest settlement on Taros Prime. Smoke rose from burning buildings in the distance. The smell of death and destruction carried on the wind. "All units, sound off," Deho commanded as his Marines spread out from their landing zones. "Alpha Battalion, landed and secure. Bravo Battalion, on the ground and moving. Special Forces in position and ready." Deho activated his armor's sensor suite. The advanced systems could detect life signs, analyze atmospheric conditions, and identify weapon signatures from several kilometers away. What he saw made him angry. "Sir," called Major Mireille over the radio, "I've got eyes on Draxan positions inside the city. They're using civilian buildings as cover." "Rules of engagement?" "Standard Deathworlder protocol, sir. Protect the innocent, eliminate the threat." Deho smiled grimly inside his helmet. The Deathworlder protocol was something human military. Planners had developed specifically for situations like this. Other species fought wars with complicated rules about acceptable targets and proportional response. Humans had a simpler approach. Anyone who threatened innocent people died quickly and violently. "All units, advance on the city. Weapons free. On any Draxan forces. Priority is civilian evacuation." The Marines moved forward with the smooth efficiency of a machine. Their powered armor allowed them to run faster than unarmored humans, jump over buildings, and shrug off small arms fire. The Draxans had never faced anything like them. The first contact came at the city's outskirts. A Draxan patrol spotted Alpha, company advancing down the main road. They opened fire with their standard plasma rifles, expecting to cut down the primitive humans easily. The plasma bolts splashed harmlessly off human armor. "Contact front," reported Captain Hyung over the radio. "Engaging." The human response was swift and overwhelming. Particle beam rifles fired back with deadly accuracy. The entire Draxan patrol was eliminated in less than 30 seconds. "Push! Forward!" Deho ordered. "Don't give them time to organize." As his forces advanced into the city, they began finding the evidence of Draxan brutality. Bodies in the streets, burned homes, mass graves hastily covered with rubble. "Sir," came Mirai's voice tight with controlled anger, "I've found something you need to see." Daiho moved to her position, a large building that had once been a school. Inside, they found hundreds of bodies, all civilians, all executed with plasma weapons at close range. "Children," whispered Sergeant Unmi, one of his medics. "They killed children." Daiho felt the cold rage that every human soldier learned to control. This wasn't war. This was extermination. "All units," he said into his radio, "new rules of engagement. No prisoners, no mercy. These bastards want to see what deathworlders can really do." The battle for New Haven became a nightmare for the Draxan forces. Human Marines moved through the city like ghosts, appearing suddenly to eliminate enemy positions, before vanishing again. Their weapons were more advanced, their tactics more flexible, and their motivation absolute. But the real shock came when the Draxans tried to use their standard terror tactic, threatening civilian hostages. "Human forces," came a transmission from the Draxan commander, "withdraw immediately, or we will execute the prisoners we have captured." Daiho's response was broadcast on all frequencies. "Execute them, and we'll make sure you die slowly." Major Mirai's Special Forces team was already moving. They had located the hostage site using thermal imaging and were preparing to assault the building. Their equipment included non-lethal weapons specifically designed for hostage rescue. Breach in 3, 2, 1. The building's walls exploded inward as the Marines used shaped charges to create multiple entry points simultaneously. Stun. Grenades disabled the guards while precision rifle fire eliminated any Draxan soldier who posed a threat to the hostages. In less than 2 minutes, 47 Terran civilians were free. "Hostages secure," Mirai reported. "All Draxan guards eliminated." The rescue operation was repeated throughout the city. Human technology and training proved superior in every engagement. The Draxans, who had expected to face primitive resistance, found themselves fighting the most advanced military force in the galaxy. By sunset, New Haven was liberated. Similar operations were proceeding in the other occupied cities. The Draxan ground forces, cut off from orbital support and facing an enemy they couldn't understand, began to surrender in growing numbers. "Sir," reported Colonel Jawan, "we've established contact with civilian survivor groups. They're coming out of hiding now that they know we're here to help." Daiho watched as Terran families emerged from basements and caves where they had been hiding for days. Human medics immediately began treating the wounded while Marines distributed food and water. The sight that affected him most was a small Terran child, no more than 6 years old, walking up to one of his Marines. The soldier, a tough veteran, named Corporal Seokjin, knelt down to the child's level. "Are you the ones who answered our call?" the child asked in broken Galactic Standard. "Yes," Seokjin replied gently. "We're here to help." The child smiled for the first time in days. "My grandmother said someone would come. She said good people always answer when children are scared." Daiho turned away, not wanting anyone to see the tears in his eyes. This was why humans fought. Not for territory or resources or political advantage. They fought because someone had to stand between innocence and evil. "Sir," came Captain Yunha's voice over the radio, Orbital reconnaissance shows Draxan reinforcements approaching the system. 3 more fleets, approximately 60 ships total. Understood, Deho replied. Continue ground operations. Let Admiral Soman worry about what's coming from space. Commander Young-Ho sat in the cramped bridge of his stealth frigate Shadow Walker, watching the empty space around Taros Prime. His 6 ships had been positioned at the system's edge for 12 hours, invisible to most sensors, and waiting for exactly what was now approaching. Contact, whispered Ensign Nari from her sensor station. 3 Draxan fleets dropping out of hyperspace, 62 ships total. Young-Ho studied the tactical display. The Draxan reinforcements had arrived exactly where human intelligence predicted. They would. These aliens were nothing if not predictable. Classification: mix of cruisers and destroyers, sir. Some troop transports in the rear. Looks like they're planning a major ground assault. They're too late for that, Young-Ho said quietly. Commander Deho's Marines had already liberated most of the planet. The few remaining Draxan ground forces were either dead or surrendering. Sir, called his communications officer, Admiral, Soman is requesting immediate intelligence on enemy capabilities. Young-Ho opened the secure channel. Admiral, this is Shadow 6. I count 62 hostiles, standard Imperial configuration. They're moving in 3 separate battle groups toward the planet. Any sign they've detected our presence? Negative. They're running standard approach patterns, no enhanced sensor sweeps. Maintain position and continue observation. We'll let them get comfortable before we introduce ourselves. The Draxan fleets moved deeper into the system with the confidence of a superior force. Their commanders had no reason to suspect they were flying into a trap. As far as they knew, the siege fleet had simply gone silent due to communication problems. On the bridge of the lead Draxan battleship Imperial Wrath, Fleet Marshal Korthak reviewed the tactical situation. He commanded the largest force the Empire had assembled in this sector. 62 ships and 200,000 troops. More than enough to crush whatever resistance they might face. Marshal, reported his sensor operator, I'm not detecting any signals from War Marshal Vorthak's fleet. Equipment failure, Korthak said dismissively. Vorthak was always careless with his communications gear. We'll sort it out when we reach orbit. His intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. Sir, shouldn't we at least run a full sensor sweep? Standard procedure when approaching a contested system. Contested? Korthak laughed. By whom? The planet has no military forces. The only other ships in the area were a few primitive human vessels, probably traders who fled at the first sign of trouble. Unknown to Korthak, those primitive human vessels were already moving into position. Admiral Soman's battle fleet had been waiting in the shadow of Taros Prime's largest moon, their advanced stealth systems hiding them from Draxan sensors. All ships, came Soman's voice over the fleet communication channel. Prepare for engagement. Target priority is command vessels and troop transports. We want to minimize their ability to reinforce ground operations. On the stealth frigate Shadow Walker, Young-Ho watched the Draxan fleets continue their approach. They were almost in the perfect position for what Admiral Soman had planned. Sir, Nari said urgently, the lead Draxan fleet is beginning orbital insertion. They'll be in firing range of the planet in 6 minutes. Signal the Admiral, Young-Ho ordered. Enemy fleets are in position. The response came immediately. All units, execute Operation Mousetrap. Space around Taros Prime suddenly filled with human warships. Admiral Soman's main battle fleet emerged from behind the moon, while Captain Hyon's destroyers dropped their stealth fields at point-blank range. The Draxan reinforcements found themselves surrounded by over 300 human vessels. Fleet Marshal Korthak stared at his tactical display in shock. Moments ago, the system had appeared empty except for his own ships. Now he was surrounded by an enemy fleet that outnumbered him 5-1. "Where did they come from?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied weakly. "Our sensors show no trace of their approach." "What species are they?" "Computer identifies them as human vessels, sir." Korthak felt his blood turn. Cold. Humans. The primitive deathworlders that everyone dismissed as unimportant. But these ships didn't look primitive. They looked like instruments of war designed by a species that understood violence on a fundamental level. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans are transmitting." Admiral Soman's voice filled every Draxan bridge in the system. "Attention, Draxan forces. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately and prepare to be taken into custody for war crimes. Any attempt to flee or resist will result in your complete destruction." Korthak looked around his bridge. His officers were waiting for orders, but he could see the fear in their eyes. The human fleet was enormous. Their ships were clearly more advanced than anything in the Imperial Navy. But he was a fleet marshal of the Draxan Empire. His reputation had been built on never backing down from a fight. "All ships," he commanded, "Battle Formation Alpha, target their flagship. If we're going to die, we'll take as many of them with us as possible." The Draxan fleets tried to form up for battle, but they were already trapped. Young-Ho's stealth frigates had moved to block their escape routes, while the main human force closed in from multiple directions. "Sir," called Captain Hyon from his destroyer, "Draxan ships are charging weapons. They're not surrendering." "Then we do this the hard way," Admiral Soman replied. "All ships, weapons free. Priority targets are command vessels and troop transports." The Second Battle of Taros Prime began with the devastating precision that had become the hallmark of human military operations. Unlike the chaotic fleet action that had destroyed the siege force, this engagement was carefully orchestrated. Human fighters swarmed the Draxan formations like angry insects, their advanced missiles picking apart escort vessels. The main battle. Fleet's heavy weapons targeted capital ships with surgical accuracy. Each shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy, preserving evidence of war crimes while eliminating the threat. Young-Ho watched from his concealed position as the battle unfolded. It wasn't really a battle at all. It was a demonstration of technological and tactical superiority so complete that resistance was meaningless. "Sir," Nari reported, "Draxan Fleet Group 2 is attempting to withdraw. They're trying to reach the hyperspace jump point." "Block them," Young-Ho ordered. "Full stealth approach. Target their engines only." The Shadow Walker and her sister ships moved to intercept the fleeing Draxans. Their quantum torpedoes struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling the fleeing ships' propulsion systems without destroying them. On the Imperial Wrath, Fleet Marshal Korthak watched his command fall apart around him. Half his ships were already dead or disabled. The others were fighting desperately against an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. "Marshal," his tactical officer called out, "we've lost contact with Fleet Groups 2 and 3. Group 1 has taken 60% casualties." "Impossible," Korthak said. "We outnumber them." "Sir, their technology it's beyond anything we've encountered. Their weapons are faster, more accurate, more powerful. Their ships are harder to hit and harder to damage when we do hit them." Korthak stared at the tactical display. In 30 minutes of combat, the humans had systematically dismantled a force that should have been capable of conquering an entire star system. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, the humans are transmitting again. This time it was a different voice, younger, but carrying absolute authority. Draxan vessels, this is Commander Young-Ho of the Terran Defense Corps. Your fleets are defeated. Your ground forces are eliminated. Your war crimes have been documented. Surrender now and you will be treated according to galactic law. Continue fighting, and you will be destroyed. Korthak looked around his bridge one more time. His ship was badly damaged. Most of his fleet was gone. The humans had demonstrated that continued resistance was suicide, but more than that, he had begun to understand something that terrified him. These weren't just better weapons or superior tactics. This was a completely different philosophy of warfare. The humans fought with the focused intensity of predators protecting their young. All ships, he said finally, stand down, prepare for surrender. The order went out across what remained of the Draxan force. Weapons powered down, shields dropped. The most powerful naval force the Empire had ever assembled in this region submitted to a species they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Soman's voice came over the communication channel one final time. Draxan ships maintain current positions. Boarding parties will take you into custody shortly. Any attempt to resist or destroy evidence will be met with immediate destruction. On Taros Prime, Major Mirai watched the end of the space battle from her position in the liberated city of New Haven. Around her, Terran civilians were emerging from hiding places, many of them crying with relief. "Ma'am," reported Sergeant Kwangsu, "the last Draxan stronghold has surrendered. The planet is secure." Mirai nodded. In less than 24 hours, human forces had completely liberated a world and destroyed 2 enemy fleets. The speed and efficiency of the operation would have been impossible for any other military force in the galaxy, but what impressed her most wasn't the military victory. It was watching her Marines share their rations with hungry Terran children, seeing medics work around the clock to treat alien wounded, observing S. Deep in the command bunker of the Draxan High Command on their homeworld of Craxus Prime, Supreme War Marshal Thorgak stared at the reports coming from the Kepler sector with growing disbelief. 3 fleets, over 90 ships, 200,000 troops, all destroyed or captured by a single human battle group. "This is impossible," he said for the 10th time. "Humans are primitives. They barely qualify for Galactic Council membership." His intelligence chief, Colonel Nexum, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, the reports are confirmed by multiple sources. The humans deployed advanced stealth technology, quantum weapons, and tactical coordination beyond anything we've seen before." "Then we'll deploy something they haven't seen," Thorgak said, his voice cold with anger. "Prepare the bioweapons." The bunker fell silent. Every officer present knew what that meant. Bioweapons were forbidden by every galactic treaty. Their use was considered a crime against all sapient life. "Sir," Colonel Nexum said carefully, "the use of biological weapons against civilian populations would unite every species in the galaxy against us." "The galaxy is already turning against us," Thorgak replied. "I've been monitoring the communication networks. News of our defeat is spreading everywhere. Smaller species are beginning to ask for human protection. If we don't act decisively now, the Empire will lose its authority forever." He walked to the massive display screen that showed the strategic situation across Draxan space. Red indicators marked human fleet positions. They were small compared to the Empire's total forces, but their presence was having effects far beyond their numbers. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving surrender requests from 3 more systems. The local governors, say they can't guarantee loyalty if human ships appear in their sectors. Thorgak felt his anger building. The Empire had ruled this region of space for 800 years. They had conquered dozens of worlds and subjugated countless species. Now a handful of primitive deathworlders were threatening to bring it all crashing down. "Deploy the Crimson Death virus to Taros Prime," he ordered. "Full atmospheric saturation. I want every living thing on that planet dead within 48 hours. "Sir," Colonel Nexum protested, "there are human forces on the surface. If we use bioweapons against them, then we'll see how tough these Deathworlders really are." The order went out through encrypted channels to the Biological Warfare Division. Within hours, a single stealth ship was launched toward the Kepler sector, carrying enough engineered virus to kill every living creature on Taros Prime. On the liberated world, Admiral Soman was meeting with Elder Naim, the Terran leader whose desperate message had started everything. The old farmer looked fragile but determined as he toured the human field hospital that had been set up in New Haven's main square. "Admiral," he said in his careful galactic standard, "my people owe you a debt we can never repay. You came when no one else would listen." "We came because it was the right thing to do," Soman replied. "No one should have to face what your people experienced." Around them, human medical teams worked alongside surviving Terran doctors to treat the wounded. The collaboration was remarkable. Despite the species' differences, the universal language of healing allowed them to work together seamlessly. "Elder," called Dr. Insu, the chief medical officer, "we've completed the examination of your people. Most of the injuries are healing well. The psychological trauma will take longer." Elder Naim nodded sadly. Many saw things that no one should see. Families destroyed, children. He couldn't finish the sentence. "We have counselors trained in cross-species therapy," Dr. Insu said gently. "With your permission, we'd like to establish a permanent medical station here." "You would do that? Even though this isn't your world?" Admiral Soman answered. "Elder, there's something you need to understand about humans. We don't help people because they're our people. We help people because they're people." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Commander Deho. "Admiral, we have a problem. Our orbital sensors have detected an unknown ship entering the system. Small, heavily stealthed, but we managed to get a partial scan." "What kind of ship?" "Draxan design, but modified. The computer identifies it as a biological warfare platform." Soman felt ice form in her stomach. "Are you certain?" "Yes, ma'am. The ship is carrying multiple atmospheric dispersal systems loaded with an unknown organic compound." Elder Naim looked confused. "Biological warfare? What does that mean?" "Admiral," Soman's expression was grim. "It means they're planning to poison your entire planet. Kill every living thing on the surface." The elderly Terran went pale. But there are millions of survivors. Children in the mountains. Families hiding. In the forests. "And they don't care," Soman said. "In fact, that's exactly why they're doing this. They want to send a message that anyone who accepts human protection will die." She activated her communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Somin. We have a confirmed biological warfare threat incoming. Implement Protocol Omega immediately." Throughout the human fleet, alarm klaxons began to sound. Protocol Omega was the most serious threat classification in the Terran Defense Corps manual. It meant that an enemy had threatened to use weapons of mass destruction against civilian populations. Under human military doctrine, there was only one response to such a threat: complete and absolute retaliation. "Admiral," came Captain Jisu's voice from the dreadnought Retribution. Request permission to intercept the bioweapon platform. Granted. But Jisoo, if they release that weapon... Understood, ma'am. The gloves come off. Captain Jisoo commanded the most powerful ship in the human fleet. The Retribution was one of only 6 ships authorized to carry humanity's most devastating weapons. She had hoped never to use them. All hands, this is the captain, she announced, over the ship's communication system. We are engaging a biological warfare platform. The enemy has chosen to target innocent civilians with weapons of mass destruction. As of this moment, we are authorized to use any means necessary to eliminate this threat. In the Dreadnought's secure weapons bay, automated systems began preparing humanity's most closely guarded secret, quantum torpedo warheads capable of cracking planets. The Draxan bioweapon ship Silent Death approached Taros Prime with confidence. Its captain, Major Vorik, believed his stealth systems would allow him to complete his mission undetected. The virus canisters were armed and ready. In 3 hours, Taros Prime would be a dead world. He was completely unprepared when space around him suddenly lit up with targeting lasers. "Unknown vessel," came a transmission in perfect Draxan. "This is Captain Jisoo of the Terran warship. Retribution. You are carrying biological weapons with intent to commit genocide. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Vorik stared at his displays in shock. The human ship had appeared from nowhere, massive and bristling with weapons he didn't recognize. "How did they find us?" he whispered. His sensor officer checked his instruments frantically. "Sir, they're using some kind of advanced detection system. Our stealth field is useless against them." "No matter," Vorik said. "We're only 3 hours from the planet. Release the weapons now." "Sir, if we deploy at this range, the dispersal pattern won't achieve full coverage. I don't care. Release them." The Silent Death opened its cargo bay and began launching virus canisters toward Taros Prime. Each canister contained enough engineered death to poison a continent. Captain Jisoo watched the launch on her tactical display. "All weapons, target those canisters. Fire." The Retribution's defensive systems opened up with a precision that was almost artistic. Point defense lasers tracked and destroyed each virus canister as it flew through space. The biological weapons died in brief flashes of light, their deadly cargo neutralized before it could reach the planet. "Bioweapons neutralized," reported the tactical officer. "All canisters destroyed." "Good," Jisoo said. "Now we send a message." She opened a communication channel to Admiral Soman. "Admiral, bioweapon attack has been stopped. Requesting permission to implement Righteous Fury Protocol." There was a pause. Everyone on the bridge knew what that meant. The Righteous Fury Protocol was humanity's most extreme response to the use of weapons of mass destruction. It meant the complete eradication of any military force that threatened civilians with such weapons. "Permission granted," Somin said finally. "Show them what happens when you threaten innocents in front of humans." Captain Jisoo turned to her weapons officer. "Target the bioweapon ship. Quantum torpedoes full spread." "Ma'am, that's overkill for a single ship." "No," Jisoo said quietly. "That's a message." The quantum torpedoes streaked toward the Silent Death at incredible speed. Major Vorik had time for one final transmission before his ship was vaporized. "Command, this is Vorik. The humans have weapons that shouldn't be possible. They're going to..." The transmission ended in nuclear fire, but the demonstration was just beginning. Captain Jisoo opened a channel to every Draxan military base within 50 light years. "Attention, Draxan forces," she said, her voice carrying the cold authority of absolute power. You have used biological weapons against civilian populations. This is unacceptable. You have 1 standard hour to surrender all biological warfare capabilities. Any base, ship, or facility that fails to comply will be destroyed. Ambassador Seungwoo stood in the shuttle bay of the diplomatic vessel Peaceful Resolution, adjusting his formal diplomatic robes one final time. Through the viewports, he could see the massive space station that served as the Galactic Council's headquarters. In 30 minutes, he would face the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. "Ambassador," called his aide, Assistant Secretary Jinju, "we're receiving priority communications from Earth. President Harris wants to speak with you before the session begins." Seungwoo nodded and moved to the secure communication terminal. The president's face appeared on the screen, looking tired but determined. "Seungwoo," she said without preamble, "what's the situation?" "Every species in the council is demanding answers, Madam President. Half of them are terrified of us. The other half want to hire us as mercenaries." "And the Draxans? They surrendered their biological weapons program 6 hours ago. Admiral Soman's demonstration was effective." President Harris was quiet for a moment. "How many Draxan military installations did we have to destroy?" 17, ma'am. All of them were biological weapons facilities that refused to surrender. No civilian casualties. And the galaxy's reaction? Seungwoo sighed. Mixed. The smaller species are celebrating. They're calling us liberators. The major powers are demanding that we be expelled from the Council for violating the non-interference protocols. What about the evidence of Draxan war crimes? The Council is trying to ignore it. They say internal Imperial matters are not their concern. President Harris's expression hardened. Then make it their concern. The whole galaxy needs to see what happened on Taros Prime. The shuttle docked with the Council station, and Seungwoo made his way through corridors filled with representatives from dozens of species. He could feel their stares, hear their whispered conversations. The primitive Deathworlder was about to address the most powerful political body in the galaxy. The council chamber was a vast spherical room with seating arranged in concentric circles. Each species had their designated area, with the most powerful civilizations holding the inner positions. Humanity's seat was in the outer ring, barely considered worth having until now. As Seungwoo entered, the chamber fell silent. Hundreds of alien eyes turned to watch him walk to the human delegation area. He could see the fear in some faces, curiosity in others, and outright hostility from several of the major powers. Council Speaker Zenthari, a tall insectoid being from the Hive Consortium, called the session to order with a series of harmonic clicks. This emergency session has been convened to address the recent actions of the human species in the Kepler sector. Ambassador Seungwoo of Earth will present the human position. Seungwoo stood and activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Images from Taros Prime filled the air above the assembled delegates. Bodies in the streets, burned schools, mass graves. "Honored representatives," he began. 3 days ago, a peaceful farming world sent out a desperate plea for help. They were facing genocide at the hands of the Draxan Empire. My government chose to respond. "Without authorization," interrupted Ambassador Corlix of the Syndicate Alliance. "Human ships violated Imperial sovereignty and attacked lawful Draxan forces." Seungwoo let the accusation hang in the air for a moment. Then he activated another series of images. These showed the rescued civilians, the human medical teams treating alien wounded, the collaborative efforts to rebuild destroyed cities. "This is what Draxan forces were doing to lawful targets," he said quietly. 5 million innocent farmers. Their crime was growing food that fed other species. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Several of the smaller species' delegates were visibly emotional. The humans had no right to interfere, declared Ambassador Vorthek, the Draxan representative. Taros Prime was harboring terrorists who attacked Imperial installations. Show us the evidence, Sungwoo replied immediately. What? You claim Taros Prime harbored terrorists. Show us the evidence. Where are the terrorist bases, the weapons factories, the military communications? Vorthek's silence spoke volumes. I thought so, Seungwoo continued. There is no evidence. Because there were no terrorists, only farmers whose food exports competed with imperial agricultural worlds. He activated another display. This one showed the economic data his intelligence teams had compiled. Taros Prime's agricultural exports had reduced Draxan food prices by 12% over the last 5 years. The Empire decided it was easier to commit genocide than compete in open markets. Council Speaker Zenthari's harmonics shifted to a more serious tone. Ambassador Sungwoo, while these revelations are disturbing, the fact remains that humanity deployed military forces without council authorization. This violation of established protocols cannot be ignored. You're right, Sungwoo said. Let's talk about protocols. He activated a new display showing communication logs. At 1432 Council Standard Time, Elder Naim of Taros Prime sent a desperate plea for help to the Council emergency frequency. The message clearly described ongoing genocide against civilian populations. According to Council Regulation 47 Alpha, any member species experiencing genocide has the right to request immediate intervention. The Council received no such message. Zenthari protested. Because you blocked it, Sungwoo replied calmly. The message was intercepted by Council security and classified as low priority. It was scheduled for review in 6 weeks. The chamber erupted in angry chittering, growling, and other expressions of outrage from various species. The smaller delegations were particularly vocal. 6 weeks, shouted Ambassador Quillen of the Merchant Federation. How many would have died in 6 weeks? All of them, Sungwoo answered, which was exactly what the Draxans were counting on. Ambassador, Korlik stood angrily. These accusations are outrageous. The Council follows proper procedures. Yes, Seungwoo agreed. Procedures designed by the major powers to prevent interference in their affairs. Procedures that ensure genocide can proceed uninterrupted as long as the perpetrators have enough political influence. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with delegates from dozens of species. The truth is simple. The Council failed. When innocent people cried out for help, you ignored them. When civilians were being slaughtered, you buried the evidence. When children were dying, you followed procedures. So humanity took matters into your own hands, Zenthari said, his harmonics carrying disapproval. Yes, Sungwoo said simply. We did what anyone with a conscience should do. We helped people who couldn't help themselves. And in the process, Ambassador Vorthek interjected, you destroyed 3 Imperial fleets. You used weapons of unprecedented power against lawful military forces. After they refused to stop murdering civilians, Sungwoo replied. After they deployed biological weapons against an entire planet. After they made it clear that nothing short of complete defeat would end their atrocities. He activated one final display. This one showed the current situation across Draxan space. In the 72 hours since our intervention began, 17 different species have requested human protection from various aggressors. The Merchant Federation wants us to patrol their trade routes. The Agricultural Alliance wants us to escort their food shipments. The Refugee Coalition wants us to help resettle displaced populations. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. The smaller species were no longer looking to the Council for protection. They were looking to humanity. "This is unacceptable," declared Ambassador Thyrix of the Banking Consortium. "One species cannot appoint itself the galaxy's police force." "You're absolutely right," Sungwoo agreed. "One species shouldn't have to. That's supposed to be the Council's job. But since you've abdicated that responsibility, someone else had to step up." Council Speaker Zenthari's harmonics shifted to what humans had learned to recognize as deep thoughtfulness. "Ambassador Sungwoo, what does humanity want from this council?" "Nothing," Sungwoo replied, and the simplicity of his answer shocked the chamber into silence. "Nothing? We don't need your permission to help people. We don't need your approval to stop genocides. We don't need your authority to protect the innocent. We're going to do those things regardless of what you decide here today." He gathered his materials and prepared to leave. "However," he added, "if you want to join us in making the galaxy a safer place for everyone, Earth's door is always open. We're not interested in conquest or political control. We're interested in making sure that what happened on Taros Prime never happens again." As he walked toward the exit, Ambassador Quillen of the Merchant Federation stood up. "Ambassador Sungwoo," she called out, "the Merchant Federation formally requests a mutual defense treaty with humanity." Before Sungwoo could respond, Ambassador Nexam of the Agricultural Alliance stood as well. The Agricultural Alliance also requests human protection. Within minutes, representatives from 30 different species were on their feet, all requesting some form of alliance or protection agreement with Earth. Ambassador Vorthek looked around the chamber in horror. "You're all making a terrible mistake. Humanity is a species of violent primitives. They'll turn on you eventually." "Maybe," called out Ambassador Quillen, "but they've never turned on anyone who didn't deserve it. Can the Council say the same?" As Sungwoo left the chamber, he could hear the arguments beginning. 3 months after the liberation of Taros Prime, Colonel Dong-yun stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terran Protectorate headquarters. The building rose from the heart of New Haven like a symbol of hope, its walls built from both human and Terran materials in a design that honored both species. Through the wide windows, he could see the city bustling with activity. Human engineers worked alongside Terran farmers to rebuild the agricultural processing centers. Medical teams from both species collaborated in the new hospital. Children of different species played together in parks that had been mass graves just months before. "Colonel," called Major Mirai as she entered the observation deck, "the morning briefing is ready." Dong-yan nodded and followed her to the command center. The room was filled with displays showing the current status of the Protectorate and the broader galactic situation. The numbers told an extraordinary story. "Current status report," he requested. Captain Hyung, now serving as the Protectorate's intelligence officer, began the briefing. "Taros Prime population has stabilized at 4.7 million. We've successfully relocated over 300,000 survivors from remote hiding places. The agricultural sectors are back to 60% production capacity." "What about security threats?" Dong-yun asked. "Minimal. The last Draxon holdout cell was captured 2 weeks ago. Our patrol routes cover the entire system, and early warning. Sensors extend out 20 light years in all directions." Major Mirai added her report. "The psychological recovery programs are showing good results. Elder Naim has been particularly helpful in establishing trust between our species. Many Terrans are now volunteering to work with human medical and engineering teams." Dong-yun smiled. The old farmer who had sent that desperate SOS signal had become an unofficial ambassador between their peoples. His quiet dignity and determination had helped heal wounds that went deeper than physical injury. "Sir," called Lieutenant Jong-hoon from the communication station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Admiral Somin." The main screen activated to show the Admiral on the bridge of the Iron Will. Behind her, Dong-yun could see the busy activity of a ship at combat readiness. "Colonel," she said without preamble, "we've got a situation developing in the Vega sector. The Crimson Syndicate has launched a major offensive against the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. 6 systems under attack, approximately 12 million civilians at risk." "What's our response time?" Dong-yun asked. "The 7th Fleet can be there in 18 hours. But that's not why I'm calling. The Alliance specifically requested you and your team to coordinate ground operations." Dong-yun was surprised. "They requested us personally?" "Word of your work on Taros Prime has spread, Colonel. When civilizations are in trouble, they don't just want human help anymore. They want the team that saved Taros Prime." Through the observation windows, Dong-yun could see a group of Terran children playing with human children in the rebuilt school courtyard. Their laughter carried on the wind, a sound that had been absent from this world for too long. "Admiral," he said, "what about our responsibilities here? Elder Naeem and I have discussed this. He insists that the best way to honor what happened here is to make sure it doesn't happen anywhere else." The screen split to show Elder Naeem in his simple office. The old Terran looked tired but determined. "Colonel Dong-yun," he said in his careful galactic standard, "my people are safe because you answered our call for help. Now other people need that same help. Go to them. We will be here when you return." "Elder, are you certain? The Protectorate is still being established." "The Protectorate isn't just about protecting Taros Prime anymore," Naeem replied. "It's about protecting everyone who can't protect themselves. That was always the real mission." Dong-yun looked around. His command center. His staff officers were already pulling up tactical data on the Vega sector crisis. These men and women had volunteered to stay on Taros Prime because they believed in something larger than themselves. "Admiral," he said finally, "the Protectorate accepts the mission. We'll be ready to deploy in 6 hours." "Understood. And Colonel, there's something else you should know. This won't be like Taros Prime. The Crimson Syndicate isn't just attacking random worlds. They're specifically targeting planets that have requested human protection." The implications were clear. The galaxy's predators were testing humanity's resolve. They wanted to see if the deathworlders would really fight to protect strangers on the other side of space. "They're about to get their answer," Dong-yun said grimly. 4 hours later, the Protectorate's Rapid Response Force was loading onto transport ships in orbit above Taros Prime. The force was smaller than a traditional military unit, but more specialized. Combat engineers, medical teams, psychological warfare specialists, and diplomatic liaisons all working together. Captain Minho, whose decision to answer a distress call had started everything, now commanded the transport vessel Hope's Answer. His ship had been refitted as a mobile command center, capable of coordinating complex humanitarian operations. "Colonel," he called over the communication system, "we're receiving messages from the Vega sector. The Alliance is broadcasting our arrival time to their people. They're calling it the day the Guardians come." Dong-yun felt the weight of expectation settling on his shoulders. 3 months ago, he had been a simple Marine officer. Now he was the symbol of humanity's promise to protect the innocent. "Sir," Major Mirai said quietly, "the crew is nervous. This is the first time we're operating so far from home. What if we fail?" "Then we pick ourselves up and try again," Dong-yun replied. That's what humans do. As the transport fleet prepared to enter hyperspace, Dong-Yun received one final transmission from Taros Prime. It was a message from the rebuilt school, signed by children from both species. "Dear Colonel Dong-Yun and the brave humans," it read in simple galactic standard, "thank you for saving our world. Now go save other worlds too. We will keep the light on until you come home." The message was accompanied by a drawing made by dozens of small hands. It showed human and Terran figures standing together under a bright sun, protecting smaller figures from dark shadows. "All ships," Dong-Yun announced, "prepare for hyperspace jump. We have people to save." The fleet disappeared into the swirling vortex of hyperspace, carrying humanity's promise across the galaxy. Behind them, on the surface of Taros Prime, Elder Niam stood in his garden watching the stars. The same stars that had once brought terror now brought hope. Somewhere out there, other worlds were crying for help. And somewhere out there, the Guardians were coming. In the months that followed, the pattern would repeat across the galaxy. Distress calls answered, innocents protected, aggressors defeated. The Terran Protectorate would grow from a single world to a network of dozens of systems, all united by a simple principle. Everyone deserved to live in safety. The Deathworlders had taught the galaxy a new definition of strength. Not the power to conquer, but the courage to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Not the ability to take what you wanted, but the wisdom to protect what mattered most. Captain Minho, navigating through hyperspace toward another crisis, thought about the message that had changed everything. An old farmer's desperate plea for help, transmitted into the dark void of space with no guarantee that anyone would hear it. But someone had heard it, someone had answered, and that simple act of compassion had transformed the galaxy forever. The age of unchecked aggression was over. The age of the Guardians had begun. In his quarters aboard the Hope's Answer, Colonel Dong-Hyun reviewed the mission files for the Vega sector. 12 million people were counting on him and his team. The thought should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like coming home. This was what humanity was meant to do, not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because when someone needed help, humans answered the call. Every time, without fail. That was the real power of the Deathworlders. Not their weapons or their ships or their tactics. It was their absolute, unshakable commitment to doing what was right, regardless of the cost. The galaxy was finally learning what Earth had always known. The measure of a civilization wasn't how much it could take, but how much it was willing to give. And humanity was willing to give everything.